Every morning, millions of professionals perform a silent, exhausting ritual. Before the first Zoom call or board meeting, they put on a mask, adopting a version of themselves that fits a prescribed corporate culture. The brand, one that's more extrovert, more agreeable, more energetic, or perhaps more ruthless than they actually are. Gallup's data for the UK and the US suggests that only 15% of employees are truly engaged. The rest, the other 85%, are either not engaged or actively disengaged. This isn't a failure of work ethic. It's a symptom of a hidden psychological cost, a systematic failure of human capital science. They're essentially performing a high stakes role play. When you're forced to mimic behaviors that contradict your internal state, you're performing what organisational psychologists call shallow acting. It's the act of faking emotions you don't actually feel just to meet corporate expectations or fit with the corporate culture. But here's the catch. The human brain isn't designed to maintain a lie for 50 to 60 hours a week. This forcing a fit doesn't just make you tired, it creates a structural condition called emotional dissonance, a state linked directly to productivity loss, psychological distress, and burnout. In the UK alone, stress related problems account for nearly half of all lost working days. The financial impact is staggering, estimated at $7 trillion in lost global productivity annually, or as one CEO described, eye watering. Hi, I'm Dr. Nick Kecker. Welcome to The Psychology Guy. I've spent over 25 years navigating the executive suite across global industries, observing firsthand why brilliant teams fail and talented, charismatic leaders self destruct. My mission is to bridge the gap between hard behavioral science and the messy reality of people struggling with modern organizational life. This channel is a lone wolf production. I research, write, and produce everything you see, leveraging AI to scale the workflow, but keeping the science and the production 100% human. Let's amass the science of performance together. We're currently in the middle of an authenticity paradox. Organizations tell leaders to be more authentic, while simultaneously distributing rigid policies that define exactly how an authentic leader should act. This is a paradox. Asking someone to adopt a prescribed version of authenticity and identity is, by definition, asking them to be inauthentic. This is a risk, especially critical for Gen Z, a cohort that's seen a 71% increase in serious psychological distress and is hypersensitive to corporate bad faith. Research shows that sustained inauthenticity is effectively a form of bad faith. It's linked directly to burnout, sickness absence, and even unethical behavior, which psychologists refer to as moral disengagement. If you're already acting like yourself, you can't be more authentic. True authenticity is a binary. You're either acting in accordance with your true self or you're not. The solution isn't to try harder, it's to change the environment. As an organizational psychologist, I see that the problem isn't usually the person, it's the environment. We use outdated tools like the MBTI to fit people into boxes, but the science tells us these labels are often outdated and unreliable for predicting performance. To truly understand why individuals and teams fail, we must delve deeper into the executive performance framework. To better understand why high performing individuals fail, we can use the Executive Performance Framework, or EPF. The EPF is based on the five factor model, the gold standard of personality science, to show how high pressure environments activate the darkest parts of our personalities. The hyper-rationalist, or ice shadow, is driven by an intellectual shield. These leaders rely on data to avoid the unpredictability and messiness of human emotion. While they're often high in conscientiousness, their ice shadow creates a sterile culture where psychological safety dies. They aren't cold by choice, They use logic as a defense mechanism against unpredictability and vulnerability. With a visionary narcissist or fire shadow, narcissism isn't just a clinical label, it's a spectrum. Research suggests that roughly 4% of CEOs meet the clinical criteria for psychopathy. So, it's not a stretch to recognize that a lot more than 4% of executives are subclinically psychopathic. Some say as many as 24% of CEOs and corporate executives are high subclinical psychopaths, and they cause havoc in organizations. The fire shadow uses charisma to soothe the deep fear of insignificance. Persuasive and strategic, they treat their team as a mirror for their own ego. They're expert performers during recruitment and presentations, but often leave a trail of collaboration overload and burnout. The avoidant architect, or fog shadow, is often high in agreeableness. These leaders build complex processes specifically to avoid conflict. Their shadow is conflict phobia and a chronic fear of rejection. These individuals create a fog where accountability is impossible because no one is ever allowed to be wrong. With the controlling perfectionist, or still shadow, anxiety is disguised as high standards. These individuals micromanage everything because they can't tolerate uncertainty. They don't just want a good outcome, they want a predictable one. Innovation dies here because this leader's team is too afraid to deviate from the still light process. Why are we so blind to these shadows? Consider the following two real life cases. Madeline G., a high performing lawyer, saw herself as being warm, trustworthy, and altruistic. But when her husband took the same personality test that Madeline took, the result was a shock. He saw Madeline as the exact opposite of how she saw herself, and it wasn't flattering. He saw someone low in trust, warmth, and conscientiousness. Over time, these characteristics catch up with you. Madeline was eventually asked to leave her law firm, her husband walked away, and her marriage failed, both of which were outcomes she never saw coming. In the second case, Duncan F. is a single male and in his late 50s. A personal friend for over 30 years, Duncan is a successful professional with an enviable lifestyle and who seems to have everything he wants in life. And yet, when we caught up after a long gap, he shared that he was struggling with depression. He said he'd recently broken up with his latest partner and was wondering why he couldn't maintain a successful long-term relationship. He explained that all his relationships followed a similar pattern, which was making him question whether there might be something wrong with him. After discussing the situation, I suggested it might be interesting for him to take a personality assessment and nominate two very close friends who would complete the same assessment based on their perception of him. He was skeptical, but he agreed. We evaluated his personality assessment data, compared it with his friends' assessments, and placed it in the context of his lifestyle. It became clear he didn't understand himself well enough to know what kind of relationship would be successful, or how he might do things differently and better manage his happiness. Once we worked through all of the personality data and discussed it in the context of his previous relationships, it became obvious to Duncan why they had ended and how he might learn from these experiences. He called me a couple of weeks later, thanking me, saying that the process had completely changed his life, and asking if I'd be willing to do the same for a number of his friends. From skeptic to advocate, eh? So, what are the lessons from this? Self awareness isn't a luxury, it's a foundational human competence. The individual most oblivious to their own personality is often the most insensitive to the differences of those around them. In both of the cases above, the same lack of self awareness and understanding meant that neither Madeline nor Duncan could properly take charge of their own happiness. If you'd like to learn more about your personality, visit my website where you'll find a free personality assessment tool. Just go to the Psychology Guide page and complete the online app. You'll get a report of your personality profile based on the Big Five, the world's foremost profiling model. delivered to your inbox completely free. I'll put a link in the comments below. So, what's the solution? In the corporate world, the traditional response to these problems is empathy training. But research shows this fails because personality traits are stable, durable, and cannot be reinstalled in a workshop. Personality traits can be changed, but this isn't a trick achieved in a couple of hours. We'll cover this in a future video. To make a difference, we must prioritize deep acting, helping individuals and employees genuinely internalize the purpose behind their work. If we do this, their behavior will align authentically rather than forcing compliance and requiring shallow acting. The answer for organizations and individuals alike is situational design. We need environments that activate our best traits rather than forcing us to fake behaviors. And if we want happiness, we have to do this in our personal and professional lives. It really is that simple. If you want to stop the chronic stress that leads to burnout, you have to stop or significantly reduce the need for shallow acting. I've developed an organizational performance audit and an executive performance field guide based on the EPF framework. If you'd like a copy, feel free to reach out in the comments below or contact me on my website so you can identify these shadows before they destroy your brand's reputation, your company's human capital, or your personal happiness. I'm Dr. Nick Kecker, and you've been watching a Psychology Guide production. While this video is mainly set in an organizational performance context, the lessons are universally applicable, important life lessons we really should learn in school, not as adults. If you found this video interesting and helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Let's unmask your organizational success and your personal happiness together.